Are you ready to manage your work and personal world better to live a fulfilling, productive life? Then you've come to the right place. ProductivityCast, the weekly show about all things productivity. Here are your hosts, Ray Sidney-Smith and Augusto Pinaud, with Francis Wade and Art Gelwicks.
Hello and welcome back to ProductivityCast, the weekly show about all things personal productivity. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith.
I'm Francis Wade.
Augusto Pinaud.
Welcome, gentlemen, and welcome to our listeners to this episode of ProductivityCast. In this cast, what we're going to be doing today is having a little bit of a debate, as we do every week. But today we're going to be kind of debating the notion of should you do what you love as a career, and having a bit of a discussion around this notion of career satisfaction, career fulfillment, and productivity. There is an overlap there. If you have like the Venn diagram of career satisfaction and productivity, and that space there, we're going to really dive into that sliver for us. This topic was developed by Francis. So, Francis, what made you think of this topic, and what brought it to mind?
Something I read that pointed out that people who do what they love, especially in the nonprofit sector, can often result in burnout or end up in burnout. And it's because they love what they do so much that they end up tipping their work-life balance or work-life integration in a way that's not fruitful. So they put up with 60, 70-hour, 80-hour work weeks, pursuing a passion or a cause or altruistic motive. You could be trying to save the whales. And because you're so committed to saving the whales, you then end up working 80 hours. So your body doesn't care whether you're saving the whales or selling real estate or doing multi-level marketing, or your body doesn't care. When you're putting in the 80 hours of work, it feels the brunt anyway. And it talked about the need for people who are nonprofits and who are altruistic to also seek this kind of balance. But it made me think in general, when I was, entering the professional world or sort of establishing myself in the 90s, I remember a book that was entitled "Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow." Or if it wasn't a book, it was an article. And this was highly debated. There was a kind of almost quasi-religious belief that if you could just find what you love and then put all of your eggs in the basket, then the universe would magically come to your rescue and provide you with bottom line profits. And that also is one of the genesis, I think, why we're having this conversation, because there is that thought out there, and there are many sides to this coin. So that's I guess what the core of the matter is. Is it true? Should it be pursued? Is it different for different people? Or is there just a practical, hard market reality here, and it's nothing to do with the woo-woo?
I definitely have a copy of that book sitting on my shelf right here in view. From 1989. So let's start off with what is the reason for having a career that you enjoy? In parlance today, we're calling it love, but we can call it fulfillment or satisfaction or what have you. But what is the reason for doing that? And again, I want to really stay in the lens of personal productivity here for purposes of being productive. That is time, team, task, project, energy, those types of managements of oneself. What's the reason? What's the goal if you want to be more productive, to love what you do? What's the argument there?
When you look at what you do or don't do, and you look at from the lens specific of the productivity, it seems to be really, really important what you do. The reason I believe of that is if you don't enjoy what you do, it is really hard to be productive. If you get, when I work with productivity with my coaching clients, okay, and you look at the stuff that they procrastinate, the stuff that is on their list for years, some of them you wonder, okay, why this has been there for years. The reason is I'm afraid I don't enjoy it. I there are many reasons on that, and all of them at the end comes to this is something that I'm not passionate or afraid to it. So if you get a career where you have zero passion, okay, can you do it? Yeah. Can you be good at it? Yes. Can you be your best at it? No. It's not. I don't believe it's possible. I believe that component, that passion component, it's really a key to attain a high level of productivity and to attain a balanced, happy life on that.
If you love what you do, you're more likely to be really, really good at it at some point. And you're more likely to invest the hard hours and the learning and the self training and the evaluations. You're more likely to develop yourself in that direction. I think that's as an endpoint, everyone would agree. And there's actually a study that I just put up in the show notes. It shows multiple levels of motivation. And the most motivated person is the one who does what they do because they love it, only because they love it, and not because of the outputs or because of the potential or because of the money or because of the peer pressure or because of the inertia. So the list that I just gave are the other reasons why people do their jobs, and they're all lesser than the actual love of the work itself, which is the highest in this particular article. It's some research done from the 1980s. But and here's the big but. What we learned back in the day, 1989, as you said, puts the cart before the horse, according to people like Cal Newport. And I think it's true from my observation also, which is that even though that's the end point, and even though we could agree that that's the ideal, the harder question is, how do you get from here to there? And that's where that I think is really interesting and counterintuitive. And that's where we've learned that the message of the 1989 book doesn't bear out in practice.
I There is an old saying that says the most dangerous guy on the field is the guy who is having fun. And I wish to tell you who said that, and but I have believed that, and I have seen it in practice, many years ago when I was, in the active sales for electronic world as a sales manager. You could see who were the guys having fun in the field and the level of success. And it was really correlation. And I, over the years, keep that on the front of the mind because I have seen clients and friends and business partners, those that are having fun, okay, tend to be more productive, tend to be, more passionate about what they do, tend to be much better about the work they are doing, tend to be stellar about the results they're getting. I don't know. I don't think, that Field of Dreams or the book, Build It and They Will Come, it works. But what I can tell you is the people I have seen build it without that passion eventually walk away. That build the business, build the career, either way, it is really a tough thing to do when you have no passion. And I agree that the numbers are against you. But the numbers are against you, doesn't matter what you do. If you said, well, I'm going to be an engineer, how many engineers are on the streets? That is going to make a difference for you to be the number one. You may or may not, but if you don't have the passion, you most likely will not have the stamina to push that long enough to at least being able to aim on the top part.
I will direct everybody's attention to a really amazing speech that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave called the Street Sweeper Speech. And what he talked about, he happened to be talking to some inner city kids and trying to educate them about this notion, which is that no matter what you do in life, if you do it with a sense of excellence, then you will be fulfilled, that you will feel good about your place and role in society. And I've always held to this notion that if I'm going to be a dishwasher or if I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to practice both of those crafts with a standard of excellence, which means that no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to be challenged to do my best. And if you think about it from that perspective, being productive in that environment is identifying activities that you can improve, you can optimize. And as long as you're engaged, you're challenged in those ways, then you'll be motivated. I was talking before we started recording about, my ongoing theory is that challenge is motivation, in the sense that there is a standard, there's a level of challenge, or you could call it friction or whatever you want to, but there is some kind of amount of energy necessary to be pushing against you for you to then want to use that energy differently. And it's like complacency, right, is a form of discomfort, and we just get challenged. We get challenged to do things. So anyway, my point is that we all need a certain amount of challenge, and we can create our own challenge. So in the dishwasher example, you could plan to clean the dishes cleaner than any other dishwasher. You can create a little competition, right? You can plan to clean dishes faster, or at the end of the evening when you've got to mop the floors and close up the equipment, you could see how quickly you can get that done up to the level of standard necessary, right? Because it's not about compromising on quality. It's about being able to figure out how to do it in ways that are highly optimal. So you can really just hate the job, but love what you're doing because of the challenge you create in that environment. And the same thing with being a lawyer, right? Being a lawyer is not all that fun sometimes, but you can create all kinds of interesting challenge. You can take on engaging cases if you have latitude in your company to be able to do that in the firm that you work for. You can specialize in different areas of law, and therefore find particular aspects of the law that you want to really focus on. So on either side of the coin, no matter what life gives you, the street sweeper speech has really fundamentally always spoken to me in that sense, that I don't really need to do what I love if my job pays the bills. I happen to be really lucky in the world, and I happen to be able to do what I love, but I don't think everybody does, nor does everybody. I have a dear friend who is a bureaucrat, and has been his entire career. And I can't imagine that he loves what he does. I don't know that he's explicitly said that he doesn't. But you're talking about a highly productive person who works in the government. Like, this is not enough of an oxymoron. And yet here we are with someone who really does. They care about what they do. I don't think they love their job, but they care about what they're doing. They care about the purpose of what they're doing. And so this leads me to my next kind of thought and question for you guys, which is, when we talk about a career, is it the same as when we're talking about a profession, a job, vocation, avocation, hobby, or otherwise? Like, what's the difference between doing what you love there and being productive there, and, say, for example, having a side hustle where you might be highly productive in that environment and potentially not as productive at work? You're just kind of treading water.
I put up a diagram. It's a 4-part Venn diagram. It's pretty popular, but there's a circle that says that which you love. There's one that says that which the world needs. There's one which says that which you can be paid for. Another one which says that which you are good at. And then it has a sweet spot where all 4 of them combine. I think that what you're asking is, can you live a life which has multiple kinds of fulfillment? And I think, yes, money is one part. If you can pay the bills and love what you do, those are good. But I think there's also things that you're good at. There's things that you're curious about. There's things that the world actually needs at a very high level, because arguably the street sweeper, if he or she only stays at the level of street sweeping, won't make a profound difference in the world in their street sweeping by itself. They could take it to a whole nother level and go into the sanitary ways to clean streets, and take it to training and they could expand on the whole concept and take it to the whole another level. But I think what you're saying is, is it helpful to think of fulfillment as uh, kind of what this Venn diagram says, and or implies that there are multiple ways to think about fulfillment, and the richer they are, kind of the more fun it is, because no, it's really a multi-part game. It's not just a game of getting enough money to feed my kids. That's a very simple game, and when life reduces to that kind of basic level, it's not a lot of fun, right? But we're now, here in 2020, we are capable of thinking of fulfillment in multiple dimensions and paying attention to fulfillment in all these dimensions. And we're lucky we have the resources, the internet, which can allow us to find people who have all these different kinds of commitments that we have, and we can nurture them with good time blocking techniques, right? We can actually invest in them, and we need not live a life that is sort of collapsed and surrendered. Like, the person that you mentioned reminds me of a couple of. I hate to say this, and I don't mean to put down civil servants, but I have found the culture echoed in the civil service where people say, I'm just holding on to retirement, and as long as I get my check, I'm good. I don't care what they tell me. I don't care whether I like it or not. I don't care how long I stay. I don't care. They've basically turned off all these other switches that we're trying to turn on in this conversation. And they sound a bit resigned. They sound very resigned. And I remember running into a friend of mine from college about 15 years ago. And I remember when he was alive, and he loved oceanography, and he ended up not pursuing it because there wasn't enough money in it. He ended up pursuing another profession altogether. And when I saw him, he was in a part of the government that was deadening. And he said, I don't really like the job. I don't like what I'm doing. I gave up the oceanography. I had to do this instead. And I'm just holding on to retirement because I get a really good pension. And I saw my friend, who I remember as a college student, who was so alive with possibility. I now saw him as someone who had lost his way. So there's that.
Yeah, so I have a couple comments there, and just to play devil's advocate, which is one. So one is clarification. So the diagram you were talking about, for folks who want, we'll place an image of this in the show notes, the comparison. But there is something called ikigai, and the ikigai is roughly translated in Japanese to reason for being. There is a lotus diagram that was developed by Mark Wynn and Dan Buettner, the gentleman who did the research on the blue zones. The notion here is that he built out the lotus version of the diagram and kind of expands upon that notion of the four circle diagram for purposes of reason for being, and it shows where a vocation and those kinds of things really develop in your world based on what earns you money, what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs. And so really it's about contribution. And so so there's that. And so you can go check that out. And it's really, really interesting to look at that diagram and understand where things fit based on the overlap of those four ovals. So then to the argument that Francis is making, I will say this, that people have other interests in their life outside of their job. You are not your job, and I'll give you a reason why. I was really wrapped up in the identity of my prior position, the prior company that I owned, and when that ended, and the title was no longer mine, right? In the sense that I was no longer in this industry, and I was no longer in this position in this community, because it's just, that was it. That was the end of the road for me in that space. It was extremely depressing. And I just want people to recognize that if you get too wrapped up in a particular career, especially nowadays when we change careers so often, we should be more aware of our functional skills than we should our roles and the larger kind of macro look at a single career. We're going to have, most people are going to have multiple careers in their lives. And when you retire, for example, and I hope that all of you listening get that opportunity, when that happens, or at least have the ability to, some people don't want to retire, but you want to continue doing things. And when you change from being in your, say, active career and decide to then retire, you don't want to lose purpose and meaning in life because of this arbitrary title that you've assumed. You want to be able to use the skills you have productively in whatever pursuit you have. That's my argument. And I think that if you can do that, then it doesn't matter what you're doing. And to kind of the point you were making, Francis, about the friend you had who kind of didn't have a passion. I think that finding passion doesn't have to be found in the thing that pays you. And for, say, for example, the street sweeper, or the dishwasher, for example, that argument actually is more insidious because it tells people that, and I know that you didn't mean this, but I mean, it somewhat tells people that they don't have a place in society that's valuable. And that wasn't your argument. I believe your argument was to the effect that they didn't feel like they were contributing in a way, and that by itself may not be as satisfying. But if you say that people don't have purpose and meaning in the grander objectives of society, that is somewhat demeaning to the role of that individual. And I'll give an example. I'm working with a particular client who is doing some really amazing things in the world, and I'm a small cog in that, but that I can be a part of it by helping him means that I'm contributing to this much grander goal in the world. And so everybody needs the dishes washed. Everybody needs the garbage taken. Those roles contribute because of interdependence on the planet. And so we cannot disregard any small role as being not worthwhile doing. And I hope that people who maybe think that their role is insignificant remembers that they're playing that role in the larger quilt of moving forward the mission and vision of their organization or of society generally.
So Cal Newport offers an amazing rebuttal. So he says, do not wait around basically to find this passion as if it will alight upon you like the sun shining from over the over the rooftops into your eyes to tell you that you're on purpose. No, he says, do what you do and find purpose and passion in it. And I can say from my experience, firsthand experience, that that's exactly what happened in my case, and it happened unexpectedly, and it's transferable, it's scalable, is what he says in his book, I think, or that's where I read it. That anyone, even the street sweeper that we're talking about. So we may look from the outside and judge and say, he or she doesn't add huge value, and they're playing a very small role, and it's so minor that it doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. I read his book and I say, but that's nonsense. There's a level that someone, and I wrote an article, maybe I should put it in the show notes, about a plumber that I knew, and he's passed away now. But this guy came to my house, and I actually knew him from a prior incarnation, prior relationship. Didn't even remember he was a plumber until I was referred to him, and they said, "Oh yeah, I know that guy." So he comes to the house, right, and he gives me an exposition on plumbing that was fascinating. Now, somebody may say, "Well, he's just a plumber." No, I don't believe there's any just on anything. I believe that what Cal Newport says is true. You can You can carve and create and find expertise anywhere if you have the willingness to do so, and if you are willing to, which is the way I think he puts it. If you're willing to fall in love, then it doesn't really matter where you start. And if you think it's the other way around, he says, you're wrong. If you think you have to find the love first and then you'll do the work to discover its inner intricacies, he said it doesn't work that way. I thought that was fascinating because it matched my experience, personal experience, and my experience of this plumber.
I will say that I think we're saying the same things, because I, while don't always agree with Professor Newport, as you know, regarding certain things, I do agree on this, that passion is actually something that develops over time. It is not something that you have before you start it. And this is akin to the idea that people are motivated by other things, by other drivers than challenge, when it comes to, say, a career, or by a function that they satisfy. Most people in the productive sense are motivated by challenge, and when they don't have that challenge, that's when things are mundane, and then they don't want to do things. And the same thing with passion. Passion actually is a lagging factor. It's not a leading factor, that is. I think we're saying the same things here. I think that, when it comes to following your passion, it should be living into the passion, a little bit of a corollary to Rainer Maria Rilke. So I'm right there with you.
Coming a little bit back to what you were saying at the beginning, I think there is an important decision and comment to make in here. You can do. The problem for me is not if you work your passion. Hey, if you can find and work your passion, great. I know people who do job who are not their passion, but they are using whatever this job produce, income, prestige, time, whatever it is, to pursue their passion. And they don't want to keep their passion, but they have the passion. The issue I found is the people who have no that who have lost the pursuit of that passion. It's fine if you decide to do, the job. Hey, okay, and you are going to do, street sweeper because it's. But at the end of the week, okay, you go and now you volunteer because that's what is your passion. But you don't want to do that in your day to day. That's awesome. The problem comes when if you can't or don't want to make your passion your work, your day to day living, and you go to the job and you forgot about that passion component. And that is the people I was referring at the beginning. And I sadly know a lot of them that come and have this work, and they may be good even, but they are never going to be their best, not at that. And you come and you ask them, what is what you do after? And they come white. I had a client once who came and told me, well, my favorite thing is running. So great. So what do you do for running after you get out of work? Oh, I haven't run for the last 3 years. So that disconnection, as obviously as it was for this person when she explained it to me, it is what I seen a lot of people experience. Yes, they have the job, who cover the bills, who do that, but it do not produce anything. And what they are sadly experiences is a really, really slow death where they lost that pursuit for the passion, that excitement, and then just now try to or kind of turn into an automaton who go 8 to 5, do what they need to do, but they have not in there, not anywhere else, any kind of passion.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about absolutely fits into the core of the discussion here, which is, when in doubt, understand that you can find mastery in your career, in a job role, and you can find it outside of that job role. But the goal is to keep looking for something that you can be skilled at and find that type of mastery there, and that will lead to general life fulfillment, not necessarily career fulfillment. I want us to close out our conversation with some action for our listeners. That is to say, what can someone listening do from an action perspective to, say, change the trajectory of their career, or find a different career if this one isn't fulfilling or satisfying, or what have you? What can they do to either love what they do as a career, or at least find fulfillment, life, or at least some kind of productive fulfillment?
The first thing I will say is, where are you in this? And I'm understanding I'm oversimplifying this in three groups. The group who do their passion for a living, the group who work and have a passion, or the group who work and have no passion. Okay. Where are you? Where do you think you spend most of your time? In which of those three boxes? And identify that. And obviously, if you find yourself into that last box, okay, if you find that yourself into that place where, well, I am, I'm doing the work and I go to work, but I don't have anything else after that, and I don't have a passion for this. Well, begin to going back into that. When there's a product that I create called Impact Journal, and the Impact Journal came from me coaching clients that get to a point that I call success that tastes like failure. You look at these people from the outside and they are successful, they are careers, they are okay, they are relatively successful, but when you talk to them, they are dead inside. They have no passion, they have lost that connection with passion, and they are really in pain, and they are now not only in pain, but they have no passion and they're afraid to leave. So if you are there are many solutions to that. It may not make, as Francis was saying at the beginning, it may not substitute the income you are making, but we can get you back into the meaning, into the happiness, into compensate a little bit more what you are having there. Okay, if you are obviously in the second group, make sure that is making, a living, but have this passion outside and they have zero interest on compensate. See how you can permeate more of that passion into the work. It doesn't need to mean change and pursue that as a full time, but sometimes it's okay. Can I bring a little bit of this passion into work? Can I, if you volunteer and you love volunteering, okay, can I convince my company to volunteer in the things that I love to? So those two things bring you more closer to that and create a less black and white distinction between one another that at the end, from the productivity aspect, will make you a much more productive and a much more happy person.
Yeah, in terms of practical advice, I agree with everything Augusto said, and I added a diagram in the show notes from the Harvard article I referred to, ranging from inertia to play. And what I would recommend that folks do is, one, look at, just draw an inventory of their life and see where they are in the continuum, and how much play there is and where it is, and all the different levels. If they could go through each area of their life and say, this one is at level play, this one is at level inertia, this one is here, and just tell the truth. Do an accurate accounting of the different areas of their life and how engaging they are. I think that would open up vistas, because obviously we all want to have as much love and play in our life as we can. That's, I'd say, true. And there are folks who don't have any at all. Most of us are in between, but I think what Cal Newport's book is pointing to is a skill. It's a lifelong skill. And I've met people who are in their 90s who, I have an aunt who's 93 or 94, and she's always looking to pick up new knowledge and new skills. So this is not a terminal frame of mind. This is more of a life orientation. And if you possess it and if you develop it to this very high, keen level, the technology that exists allows us to pick any topic, any area of our life, anything we wish, and take it to the next level if that's what we want to do. But not everyone knows that they can do that. So I've met lots of people who would say, I'm interested in this area. When I ask the next question, what kinds of things are you looking at in that area? They say nothing. I say, well, I thought you were interested in it. Yeah, but I'm too busy, or I don't know how to do this, or I can't afford that, or I can't even get started, or in other words, they don't have the skill of making the pursuit of that which they love a priority. And I think that skill is one that is life energizing and life transforming.
That you just described, Francis, how it gets connected and related to what Dr. Carol Dweck calls the mindset, and on the book Mindset, it's about the growth mindset. And if these people, part of the issue is they lack a growth mindset. So they understand what they have or the skills they have, and that's the only thing they know what to act. While a person with a more grown mindset will be able and will be open to continue that learning process open. And I wonder if that is also a big factor into this.
So I will give a little bit of a description of an exercise that you can do, and this all comes down to some work around the notion of job crafting, and it is making these kinds of modifications to your current world, career wise or otherwise, in order to be able to just increase fulfillment in what you're doing. And so this is actually based on three different pieces: the tasks you're accomplishing, the relationships you have, and the perceptions you have about the work you're doing. Think about the tasks you're doing in your job and assessing whether or not those things are ones in which you can elevate. Can you take on new duties? Can you take on some other particular thing? Can you do more of that or less of something else, and expanding or minimizing the scope of the work you're doing? Then, of course, my whole notion of really excellence, right? Upping the standard on what you're doing so that you're able to. So that's in the task paradigm. Then there's the relationship paradigm, which is can you? It says here. I'm going to link to an article on Harvard Business Review's website. And it says, quote, you can change the nature or extent of your interactions with others. A managing director, for example, might create mentoring relationships with young associates as a way to connect with and teach those who represent the future of the firm, end quote. And then there are the perceptions, which is, of course, changing how you think about your job and or certain aspects of the job. The notion here is that you may just be really upset about the way in which you were treated in an organization. But in reality, what might be happening is that you're highly valued, but perhaps you just have an annoying personality. And and you may not think you have an annoying personality, but those are always the people who have annoying personalities, right? Because they aren't aware of it. And so we have to take a little bit of introspection and perhaps a paradigm shift about where and what we are valued for in an organization. And that gives us opportunities to develop, to change, to grow in those skills. Because you can say, okay, well, perhaps I'm annoying because I care about details and other people around me are visionary thinkers. So how do I speak better to visionary thinkers? And that way I'm not as annoying to them, right? And that frustration, that conflict orientation then gives you an opportunity to actually grow and be more productive with those people while still holding authentically to who you are. You're growing as a person. So those three pieces: tasks, relationships, and perceptions. How do you be in right relationship with those pieces in your career? And that's really, at least in this HBR perspective, the notion behind job crafting. So hopefully you all have gotten some value out of thinking about should you do what you love as a career or avocation or hobby or otherwise, and starting to think about this from a little bit more productive perspective.
The tendency for anyone, and this loops back to the conversation, the conversation we started in the beginning, the reason for the show, the idea that I shared about people who are mission driven and basically working too long and too hard because they believe that they are on a huge mission. I think the danger here is to collapse our thinking or commitments into any one dimension only, and not pay attention to all of them at the same time. And I know it's harder to do that, and society would, I interviewed someone the other day who basically said that the reason that what he was saying was true is because somebody earned several billion dollars using it. And that's all that people needed to know, is that that level of financial success was proof that that worked. And I had to, in mid-interview, basically say, well, there's people who don't have that as the number one motive, and they would measure it completely differently. And the person said, oh, yeah, I agree. But his head was stuck in that there's one measure of success and fulfillment. And that is just not true anymore. That folks who have that mindset end up doing damage to themselves and others, and ultimately to society, I think.
I couldn't agree more. Well, this has been a really fun conversation. So thank you, gentlemen. And the conversation doesn't have to end. So if you have a comment that you'd like to join in this conversation about this cast or something that we discussed today, feel free to head over to the podcast website. We invite you to jump over there to productivitycast.net / the 3-digit episode number. So 001, 002, and so forth. Those are the episode numbers. Go ahead and just go to productivitycast.net / and then that number, you'll be taken to the episode page. And there at the bottom of the page, you can leave a comment, you can leave a question, and one of us will be glad to respond. There also on productivitycast.net, you'll find the show notes for each episode, which includes a machine-generated transcript, so you can scan through and just find points in the conversation if you needed to. You'll also find links to anything that we discussed and a downloadable version, actually, of the transcript as well. You can learn how to follow any of us or learn more about any of us there, and also how to subscribe that's following us through your favorite podcast app. You can find how to do that there on the website as well. There's a whole page dedicated to it. If you have any questions about personal productivity and you'd like us to tackle that topic here on ProductivityCast, please feel free to go to productivitycast.net / contact, and you can go ahead and leave a voice recorded message, or you can type a message to us and we'll get that and we'll consider it for a future episode. And so thank you for those contributions coming in. And so that's it. I've got just thanks for Augusto Pinaud and Francis Wade for joining me here on this cast. If you can, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or whatever podcast app you use that allows ratings and reviews. Thank you for doing that. And that really helps us to grow our personal productivity listening community. And so we appreciate you doing that. This brings us to the close of ProductivityCast, the weekly show about all things personal productivity. Take care. Here's to your productive life, everybody.
That's it for this ProductivityCast, the weekly show about all things productivity, with your hosts, Ray Sidney-Smith and Augusto Pinaud, with Francis Wade and Art Gelwicks.